Okay, looks like we are live. All right. So I would say first and foremost, Happy New Year to each and every one of you. My name is Willie Lightfoot. I am the president of United Professional Barbers and Cosmetologists Association. I am so excited and we are so elated. I also have on the line a few of our UPBCA board members. Our vice president, Wade uh, Davis, is also on the line. One second. Okay, I just wanted to stop that feedback. Okay, so once again, excited to have each and every one of you here. I'm also with a few members of our board. Vice President Wade Davis, our treasurer is here, Erica Brown. My wife is also a board member of our UPBCA board. We have some very special guests with us on this evening, and I'm going to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we'll go around the room very quickly and then we'll have Dr. Branch begin to start a conversation about the vaccination, the COVID-19 vaccination. So again, it's glad to have each and every one of you here. I'll start with Dr. Branch. You're muted.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this table talk. I'm excited to talk to you guys about a subject that I know is really important to all of us. I'm an assistant professor of medicine at the University of Rochester. I specialize in infectious diseases and HIV medicine. And I've also had the privilege of being able to participate in the national efforts led by the National Institute of Health to develop both vaccines and treatments in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so I'm happy to be here and share with you the scientific and medical perspective around these vaccines and how we develop them.
Thank you and welcome, welcome, welcome. At this time, Jackie Dozier.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Willie, and Wade and the rest of your team for having us this evening. I'm Jackie Dozier from Common Ground Health Program Manager for our Community and Wellbeing Initiative. And again, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. At this time, Shawnee Wilson.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shawnee Wilson. I am a physician assistant at Anthony Jordan Health. I'm currently working in the respiratory care clinic, and I also specialize in internal medicine, HIV, hepatitis C, and Suboxone. And I also am chairing the Police Accountability Board. So thank you so much for having me here tonight.
Thanks for being with us. Vice President Davis. Wade.
Sir, what's going on, man?
Good. Just a quick introduction.
Hey, how you guys doing? I'm so happy to have Jackie and the crew with us on tonight. Yes, my name is Wade Davis. I've been with UPBCA since the installation when we first started, and I'm just excited. I'm just excited about what we're doing. I'm excited about what's going on tonight, and I'm so glad that I can make it. This is a very important subject.
Glad to have you, brother. Erica Brown.
Yes, hello, hi everybody. My name is Erica Brown. I'm the treasurer with the UPBCA, and I've been with the UPBCA since 2016 as a treasurer.
Thank you, Erica. Welcome. Lady V. Lady V.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here and looking forward to the information that we're going to be receiving on tonight.
All right, thank you. Welcome. I need 585-305-5277. I need you to please identify yourself, please, sir, please, ma'am. If not, I'm going to remove you from the room. I need you to identify 585-305-5277. Going once, going twice. I'm going to have to put you back in the waiting room. Okay. Give me 1 second. All right. Okay, so Mr. Who else we got? We got any other? Yes, Dr. Lauren is on the line. She's a board member as well from UPBCA. You'd like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good evening. Loren Minter here. Looking forward to the information that's shared so that I can share it on my platform, social media platforms, and business page as well. So that I believe the more information that we have access to, the better informed we are, the better decisions that we can make.
Absolutely. Mr. Mons, you're next.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. It's good to see that everyone is doing well, hopefully. And I'm looking forward to listening as well as possibly sharing some information on this very important topic.
Thank you, sir. Welcome. Let me see. Next, I got Whitmore.
Yes, sir. My name is Whitmore O'Donkor. Friends endear me as Woody. Own a barbershop, Whitmore's International Barbershop. Also community health educator with Common Grounds. I'm just excited. Been waiting for this conversation for quite some time. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Room's getting a lot bigger, y'all. Bernita Dorsey, real quickly, we need people to be kind of quick on your introductions, please. Bernita. Edith.
Hi, Edith Reynolds, just here to learn as much as I can about the vaccination and to hear all the input that everybody has to say about it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Hannah. Hannah.
Hi, everybody. Pleasure to be here. Good to see everyone. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I'm just an esthetician. Not working right now, though.
All right. Well, we're going to be praying that you get back to work. Centona. Centona. You have the floor.
Hi, Clintona Gordon, representing Powerhouse Kingdom Cathedral Church of God in Christ. I'm happy to be here today to learn a little bit more about the vaccination. Thank you for having me.
Sorry for the mispronunciation, Clintona. Thank you, in Powerhouse. We love you guys. Sharon, you're up next. All right, Angie T. Okay, Bernice.
Bernice Dawson Prayer House. How's everybody today?
All right, Prayer House in the house. That's my church, y'all. All right, Patricia Cathy. All right, May, you're up next.
Good evening, everyone. My name is May Rogers, and I'm from Prayer House, Church of God by Faith.
Prayer House in the house. All right, Yvonne. Regina, and then we're going to start our conversation. All right. Okay, Dr. Angela Branch, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. I wasn't sure what the format you all were interested in. I can show some slides, which can sort of.
I can give you sharing per. Yep. Okay.
Okay, great. Let's do that.
All right. Give me 1 second here. Okay. All right, go ahead. Should be good. I need 585-281-14028. Can you identify yourself, please? 281-4028. If not, I'm gonna have to remove you. 281-4028. Going once, going twice. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Branch.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to give a little bit of background information to sort of frame the questions and the conversations that I think a lot of us have. I think we're all familiar with the scope of the pandemic, that it's caused nearly 100 million infections worldwide and over 2 million deaths, 25 million of those here in the United States and 400,000 deaths. We estimate that that might be as high as 600,000 deaths, which would make this the most deadly pandemic in the United States ever. And then in New York State, we've had about 150 cases, 39,000 of those here in Rochester, with about 685 deaths. This is what cases currently look like in Rochester. You can
are you supposed to be showing a screen? Because we don't see a screen.
Okay, let me try again.
Okay. There
Okay,
we go.
you seeing one now?
Where it's coming. It
Let's
says,
try again.
all right, there we are. Yes.
Okay, all right. So this is what the cases in Rochester and Monroe County currently look like. This was our spring peak here, and it wasn't quite as severe as what we're experiencing currently in terms of the total number of cases, which is the bars in blue, and the total number of patients who are in the ICU. So the bars in blue are those hospitalized. The bars in yellow are those in the ICU. So you can see that this past November, December, January has been really challenging for us as a healthcare community, as a community in general, in terms of just a lot of really sick patients coming through the hospitals due to COVID. As many of you know, it is disproportionately affecting communities of color. So that's why it's important to have conversations like these. And these are real numbers. This is not just a national problem, it's a local problem. So this is data from here in Monroe County. The blue bars are the white patients with COVID. The orange bars are African American or Black. The green bars are Latinx, and the yellow bar is Asian. This group is the number of cases, this is the number of hospitalizations, and this is the number of deaths. And it passes the eyeball test. You can see it's pretty clear that Black and Latinx far outweigh the number of cases in terms of the rates, as well as hospitalizations and deaths. In fact, the number of cases in African Americans here in Monroe County is 3 times their white counterparts. The number of hospitalizations is 5 times, and the number of deaths is 3 times. So it's really important for us to figure out how to end the pandemic, not just for the entire county or the region, specifically for our communities and communities of color. So I like to talk about vaccines and why they're important, because, you know, one of the things I hear a lot is, well, let's let other people get vaccinated first. And then once I see how it goes, then I'll get vaccinated maybe in the summer or next fall. And so I'd like to show this slide to just to illustrate why that's not a great way to approach things. These people in blue on this top line here are pretty much all of us. We're going around in the community. We've never been exposed to this virus before. We've never been infected with it. We have no immunity or protection against it, and so we're at risk. Now, the 2 people in red are people who are infected, and they're able to spread the virus to at least 2 to 3, maybe even 4 people around them. And in fact, a single person over time can lead to 1,000 people being infected in just about a month if the infection continues to rage uncontrolled. And so what you have over time is a situation where everybody eventually becomes infected, and that's what we're looking at without vaccine. And in this situation, we have a lot of loss of life. The other possibility is that we introduce a vaccine, but only a handful of people choose to take it. And those are the people we're now introducing into this group here in yellow. In this scenario, even though there's still just a little bit of infection continues, and you take a long time before you get to the place where enough people have been infected or vaccinated so that we're now immune and the pandemic ends. And under this condition, this pandemic could be with us for another couple of years, and we would have all of the social and economic impacts that are associated with the pandemic. So what we want is this. We want that there to be a small amount of infection in the community, a small amount of people who choose not to get vaccinated in blue, but the large majority of people get vaccinated, and because of vaccine, they're now protected against getting the infection. And not only do you end the pandemic as quickly as possible, you prevent the greatest loss of life. And we're currently estimating that in order to have this ideal situation, at least 80% of the population needs to have some form of immunity against the virus. That's the goal, to end the pandemic as quickly as possible. I also like to just talk a little bit about what it means to become infected, because I think understanding the science behind it really helps people to understand how we made these vaccines and why we think they're safe. So this is a cartoon of the infectious process. This is a cartoon of what the SARS coronavirus 2, the virus that causes COVID-19, looks like. These little red things sticking out of the surface that makes it look like a crown, that's a very important protein called a spike protein. Now, when you inhale the coronavirus, and that's how you get infected. You have to inhale it through your nose. It then is able to attach onto your body by the building block of all of your tissues called cells. And once it attaches, then is when it causes an infection. And what's really important about the structure of the virus is that these same little things sticking out the surface that I mentioned, the spike protein, that's actually the area that the virus attaches to the human body. And so it became a very intriguing thing for scientists and for physicians, because we thought, well, what if we could block that necessary attachment step? If the virus never attaches, it never infects. And once it infects, it actually uses your body's cells, the building blocks of your tissue, to make more copies of itself. And those copies then go on to infect other parts of the body, and then they also become potentially infectious to other people. So if you block the attachment, you block infection, and you also block transmission. So the other thing that I hear a lot is that people have a lot of fears about the idea of introducing something that's foreign into your body, because you're concerned that that foreign thing could somehow hurt you. And a lot of people think that when we vaccinate people, whatever that vaccine is made of, it stays in your body for many months and many years, and that's the thing that's protecting you. But in fact, that's not true. The thing that we vaccinate you with, it's almost always a small piece of the virus that cannot cause you to be infected, but what it's doing, it's triggering a part of your body. And in fact, if you're a person of faith like I am, it actually kind of reflects to me sort of the way God made us. He made us to have this defense system. And this defense system only gets triggered and only gets trained after you've come into contact with the actual virus or bacteria, after you're infected. And so what it's doing is it's taking advantage of something that's natural, something that if you're a person of faith, God made, and it's training it to be able to defend you. And the way it does that is by it gives you a small piece of the virus. And in this instance, it's the spike protein. And it says, this is something foreign, defend yourself against it. And it tells your body to develop antibodies and to develop other ways of being able to defend you against the virus, which then becomes memory, so that you actually are exposed to the real coronavirus. That memory is rapidly recalled, and it's actually able to defend you. And so the components itself of the vaccine actually get swept away by your body within days. And what you're left with is this triggered and trained defense that can then be recalled when you need it. The other thing that I think causes a lot of concern is people worry about the speed with which we develop these vaccines. And I think that's totally legitimate. When this all started a year ago, and we were at meetings with the NIH and with other scientists, and people said we need to develop a vaccine in 1 year. We all knew that that had never been done before, and so we had a lot of unease about it, whether we could do it safely or not. So this is how vaccines typically are developed, and it does take a while. It can take maybe 10 to 15 years to do. We start with the exploratory phase. That's what's happening in the lab. When you develop chemicals and molecules and things that you think maybe if you put those ingredients together, it can trigger that immune or defense response, which will then become protective. That exploratory phase in the lab sometimes can last 5 to 7 years. Then you move into what we call the preclinical phase. That's when we take a candidate that we think might be a good vaccine, and we test it in various different animal models to see if it will produce a good immune response and if it's not very toxic. If it passes the preclinical phase, then you move into the human trials. The phase 1, that's the first in human trials, generally is in about 100 people, and we usually give it to very healthy people. And the goal is in that trial is to demonstrate that the vaccine is in fact safe and tolerated. Only if you make it through phase 1 can you then go on to phase 2. And the goal of phase 2 is to vaccinate about 1,000 people and to find the perfect dose that gives you both a good immune or defense response with the least amount of side effects. And once you, again, make it through that important safety step of phase 2, Then you move on to the phase 3 efficacy trials where you're vaccinating tens of thousands of people. And this is the phase where you're proving whether the vaccine actually works or not. This whole clinical trial phase takes about three to 5 years. And if you're able to be successful in that, you then submit your vaccine for FDA review and approval. It's a very lengthy process that can take another year or two. And only then do you actually start manufacturing the vaccine. So that's why it takes about 10 to 15 years. And clearly that was not a strategy we can employ in a pandemic that was killing so many people worldwide. So how do we speed it up? Well, first, we skipped the exploratory phase. And the reason why we skipped that exploratory phase is because this is not the first coronavirus that's ever been determined to be something that could cause a pandemic. In fact, in 2002 and again in 2012, 2 coronaviruses emerged in China and in the Middle East, which we were worried might become pandemics. Now, those viruses were not as efficient as this current COVID-19 virus because they could not transmit very well from person to person. So they didn't become pandemics. But when we saw new coronaviruses jumping from animals to humans, we knew that coronaviruses could cause pandemics. And all of the research to develop vaccines against coronaviruses started as far back as 2003. And so we really had 17 years of data in which to rely on and draw from so that we can just adapt what we already knew about developing coronavirus vaccines to be effective against this specific coronavirus. Everything else that we did that we normally do in vaccine development, we still did. We did the preclinical trials in animals. We did the phase 1 safety trials. We did the phase 2 trials where we tried to optimize doses and figure out the dose that would give the least amount of side effects but would still be protective. And then we just are completing our phase 3 efficacy trials. We just speeded this up by not pausing in between these phases and by overlapping some of the things that we might normally do sequentially in phase 2. And that was able to cut about 3 or 4 years out of the process. And then once we had our data from phase 3, we submitted that for what we call emergency use authorization, which is where the FDA tells us what's the minimum amount of data we need to be sure that this vaccine is safe before we will allow it to be distributed to populations. And once you get that, then you apply for EUA and the vaccines are then allowed to be distributed on an emergency use basis. Lastly, because all of these vaccines are being paid for by the United States government and all of these studies are being paid for by the United States government, they were able to ask the pharmaceutical companies to start manufacturing the vaccines even before we knew it was safe and that it was effective. And that was so once we were able to prove safety and efficacy, on the very next day, we could start vaccinating people. And that's in fact what we were able to accomplish. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about how these vaccines are made so that you have a little bit of a framework to really judge the safety of them. Now, the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines are what we call mRNA vaccines. And what that means is that the spike protein, you remember the spike protein I mentioned, those little red things that stick out of surface, the part of the coronavirus that attaches to human cells? Well, we're trying to develop antibodies against that spike protein. So what we thought is, why don't we introduce spike protein to the body as a vaccine? And so the mRNA vaccine actually introduces genetic instructions, not the gene, but instructions from the gene for the spike protein. Now, when those genetic instructions encapsulated in sort of an oily layer is injected as a vaccine, it then enters into the building blocks of tissues called cells. And in the cells, it's able to convert the instructions to actual spike protein. Now, even though the spike protein, it's just protein, it can actually hurt you. It is recognized as something foreign that shouldn't be there, and your body then develops an immune response to it. You start to develop antibodies and other defenses that are able to be recalled as memory. The second way vaccines are being made are to give the spike protein gene itself, and this is delivered by a different kind of virus called an adenovirus, which has been engineered to not cause you to be ill. It's really just acting as a delivery system, sort of a Trojan horse approach, where it delivers the spike protein gene. The spike protein gene is converted to that messenger genetic instructions, the mRNA again, and then from the mRNA to protein to trigger the same immune response against the spike protein. And then the last way that vaccines are being made, and this is how the Sanofi and Novavax vaccines are being made, is by making the spike protein in the lab itself as a purified product and delivering that as the vaccine. So again, you can see sort of a pattern here, that it's all about how do we deliver the spike protein or the spike protein gene and train the body to develop a defense against that spike protein, which would block attachment and block infection of the coronavirus. So then how do we know a vaccine is a good candidate for development? Well, remember we talked about the phase 1 study where you're giving the vaccine to about 100 people and you're looking to make sure that it's safe. Well, safety is the most important thing in phase 1, but you're also looking for the immune response. So this is an example of the phase 1 data from AstraZeneca. And I just want to show you how, as scientists, we know a vaccine might be protective. So each one of these circles represents someone who got vaccinated. And here's day 0, day 28 after vaccine. We give them a second dose on day 28 and day 42 after 2 doses of vaccine. Over here are people who got COVID and recovered from COVID, what we call convalescent patients. And each one of these squares represents one of those patients who've recovered from COVID. Along the y-axis is what we call the antibody level. And remember, antibodies are the things that are going to prevent the spike protein and the coronavirus from attaching. And so we give people 1 dose of vaccine and we see, do these little red dots move up this y-axis, and now they have antibodies. And you can see some people move up, but some people kind of stay low down here. So we know 1 dose may not be sufficient. So then we give them a second dose on day 28 and we move over here and we look and we see now everybody has moved up this y-axis and now they're all in this square box here. And then you compare this square box to what happens after you were naturally infected. And in a perfect vaccine setting, the amount of antibodies that you get with vaccine would be the same as what you get with natural infection, except you skip the risk of having to be infected. And so if you're able to demonstrate that, then you know this is a good candidate because it's giving you an antibody level or an immune response that's comparable to what you would see if you were naturally infected. So how do we know that a vaccine works? That's a different question than knowing that something might be a good candidate. And that requires a phase 3 efficacy trial. So I'll show you the Pfizer results as an example. In the Pfizer phase 3 trial, we enrolled 43,538 participants. Half of those people got placebo and half of those people got vaccine, because what you're trying to prove is that giving vaccine is better than doing nothing at all. And then you look and you see who becomes sick with COVID just living their normal lives. And you determine how many illnesses do you have to assess before you can prove of efficacy. So with the Pfizer vaccine, they had determined before they even started the study that they needed to assess 170 confirmed COVID illnesses in order to be able to read this vaccine's efficacy level. And so once they reached that threshold of 170 confirmed COVID illnesses, they looked to see who got ill. And they found that 162 of those illnesses were in people who got a placebo, and only 8 of those illnesses were in people who got vaccine. And that's how they were able to demonstrate that the vaccine is 95% effective in preventing COVID-19. So in a perfect situation, there would be no illnesses in the vaccine arm at all, but no vaccine works that well. And so what you want to know is that the majority of illnesses are in the placebo group, and that even the people who got ill in the vaccine arm None of them developed a severe illness. And in fact, there was only one severe illness of all the participants who got vaccinated in the Pfizer study, which makes this an excellent vaccine. I'm going to skip this slide in the interest of time. Safety is still really important in all phases of a trial, and so we monitor our subjects really closely for any side effects. In none of the studies that are currently being conducted or have been conducted, including the Pfizer and Moderna trials, there were no deaths attributed to the vaccines, and there were no severe side effects attributed to the vaccines. But these vaccines are reactogenic. They do cause some mild, common side effects with the first dose, which is even more pronounced with the second dose. Those side effects will include injection site pain in the vast majority of people, fatigue in about half of people, headaches sometimes in about a third, muscle pain in about 20%, joint pains in about 10%, chills in about 10 to 15%, and in very few people, 4% in a younger age group of 18 to 55, and 1.4% in an older age group, a fever greater than 100.4. The vast majority of these side effects are mild. They generally last about 12 to 24 hours, and they do respond to Tylenol. People who are younger tend to have them more frequently than older adults. But even though it is quite unpleasant, it is certainly very much better than actually having COVID-19 and well tolerated in the vast majority of people. The Moderna vaccine was very similar. 30,000 people were enrolled. They analyzed 196 cases of confirmed COVID. They were able to prove 94% effectiveness. And importantly, all 30 severe cases occurred in the placebo group. So even the handful of cases that occurred in those that got vaccine, none of them were more than a mild cold, which is exactly what you want a vaccine to do. You want it to, wherever possible, prevent people from getting infected. And you want to be certain that even if they do get affected, they will either have an asymptomatic infection or at most a mild cold. So I'll skip that and then just finish with this slide, which talks about the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is probably one of the next two that'll come out. Remember, this is the Trojan horse vaccine. We don't have our results of that study as yet. Early preliminary results from the UK trial are showing that it's at least 70% effective in preventing any kind of infection, but it's a very different trial. And importantly, in this study, there were no severe cases in anyone who developed, who got the vaccine, which again is the goal. You want to make sure that that anybody who's vaccinated is prevented from severe disease and or death. Importantly, this is a way of making vaccines that we have a lot of experience with. And so we know a lot more about the long-term safety side effects of the AstraZeneca, the Johnson & Johnson, and Sanofi vaccines. And so regardless of what the final efficacy number is, if it prevents severe cases, I think we'll be very happy to have these vaccines because they're easy to make, they're cheaper to make, and it'll be the reason why we're able to vaccinate the whole of the United States and the rest of the world. So I'll stop there and I'll take some questions.
If you stop sharing your screen, Doc, before you start taking some questions, thank you so much. I just want to ask if folks would just write your questions down, because what I'd like to do, Doc, is I'd like to go to Jackie for a quick 5 minutes. Yes, just or I really would like, because you went to the trial vaccination, correct, Jackie?
Hi, so yes, I am a vaccine trials participant. I've actually had my second injection already, and I like to say after that, I'm still here. All is well. All is well, and
Which one did you have, Jackie? Which
AstraZeneca, which has not been approved as of yet, has not been FDA approved as of yet. But I would like to say that being a part of the vaccine trials for me was something that did not just come off the top of my head. Like, it was something that I really had to pray about because I too, like most of us, have mistrust or have had mistrust and still have some mistrust, when it comes to us being a part of vaccine trials and vaccine studies, as some of us like to say, being guinea pigs. And so, again, for me, this was a new season. I did my research, educated myself, and I feel like we as a people need to move past not just our history of Henrietta Lacks and Tuskegee, but we need to be more open-minded when it comes to research, and particularly when we talk about our health, because a lot of times we don't, as Black and Brown people, participate in studies because of the mistrust that we have with the government, and for other reasons, right? And so some of that mistrust are things that are currently happening today, right?
One minute, Jackie. 1 minute. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jackie.
Oh,
I said you got
what
1 minute
happened?
left. You got 1 minute left.
Oh, 1 minute left. Okay. Okay. You got me on a timer. Okay.
Yeah, I got you
All
on a timer. I'm going to you, Shawnee, next, so get ready.
Okay.
Then we're going to open it up for questions. All right. Is that it, Jackie?
No, I will just say, so do your research, think about why you're saying no to even participating in the vaccine, or why you're saying yes. We're not saying that everybody needs to do it, because it's not for everybody, but at least be able to articulate why it is that you're not doing it. So, go to your reliable resources, Dr. Branch, CDC, and even some of our community influencers, and talk to people, get to know, what it entails to be to take the vaccine. Because
Jackie.
if we do it, it will eliminate our health disparity.
Okay, Jackie. Okay, Jackie. Just as a disclosure, UPBCA is not endorsing any vaccination or telling anyone to take a vaccination.
Right.
We are simply trying to learn tonight. Shawnee, go ahead.
Wow. Okay. Hi. All right. I guess I can speak to my experience as a provider in town, embedded in community here. And really, I've had a lot of patients that have, in the primary care setting that had been affected by the virus. I would say that the COVID virus has definitely gone through our community like wildfire. I know that we are testing a lot of folks that are coming up positive, and it's really, there is a slight decrease in that, but not very much. I know this didn't happen to Jordan personally, but I do know of an institution that tested a family of 10 and 11 people that were all positive for COVID. And so when we talk about, us being at the most risk for, outcomes that are not favorable from this disease, that's really my concern as a primary care provider, plus somebody that screens people in the clinic every day for COVID. I think that, like it says, some folks can get the colds, but we get the flu. We get the worst of it because, we not only have to think of, getting the virus, we also have to think of the healthcare issues, the chronic diseases that we have on top of what will happen if we're subjected to this disease, this virus, plus our chronic issues that we have on top of that. And so that's what I want people to think about when they get the vaccine.
Thank you, Shawnee. Thank you, Jackie. Okay, so I'm going to go to the chat first, just because those questions came out first. From Wade, I hope Dr. Branch is still there. Why are the side effects more pronounced in the younger person than in the older age group?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the reason that happens is because we know that as we get older, our immune systems start to weaken a little bit. And so in young, healthy people, that's when you're going to see the most robust immune response. And those side effects, they're actually a good thing. It means that your immune system has turned on, and it's just stronger in young people whose immune systems are just healthier than what happens as we age.
What have you seen as the major obstacles to people's acceptance of the vaccination?
So I'll answer that. I think for me, and when the clinics, I ask people every day, because we, service majority Black and Brown people in the community. A lot of it is just mistrust, and also, interestingly enough, if I have a side effect from the vaccine, can I go to work the next day? Because we have people that are primary caregivers for their families, and they want to make sure that they can work. And so we have a brief discussion about that. So that's one of the obstacles that I see that not necessarily people are talking about.
Okay, Mons, you got your hand up, but you said I took the Moderna shot last Monday with no side effects at all. The next shot is February 15th. I would strongly encourage everyone to take the shot. Mons, you want to speak a little bit to that, brother?
Sure, sure. Yeah, last Monday, I want to say the 18th, I took the shot. I went in, they had a bunch of questions. They advised me that it's not an approved drug by the federal government. And I took the shot, went into the observation room for about 30 minutes or so. Was no signs of dizziness, didn't have any diarrhea, anything like that after. And I felt really good. As other people were expressing, I was kind of on the fence about if whether or not I wanted to take it, but I went and did some research, and I started to listen to the epidemiologists and physicians, and I think the science is working, and the vaccine is it's a great thing.
All right, thank you for sharing that. Bernita says, so if you had the virus, when should you get the shot?
I can answer that. So once you've had the virus, we expect that you likely will be immune or protected against getting reinfected for at least 3 to 6 months. So you probably don't have a lot of urgency around getting the vaccine. Having said that, there are new mutations of the vaccines of the virus that are emerging every day. And in fact, it's possible that the vaccine is more protective than having a natural infection, because it's looking like once you get infected with one strain, that may not protect you against another strain, whereas the vaccine is more likely to protect you against multiple different strains as the virus mutates and changes itself. So I would say that while I don't think right now there's an urgency for you to rush out and get it right away if you got infected, say, 2 weeks ago, you should still try to get the vaccine, I would say, within 90 days of your infection.
Thank you. From Hannah, if there isn't a second dose available of the same vaccine, will having two different COVID vaccines affect the efficacy of the vaccine in a significant way?
I would say that we're not recommending that people get vaccinated with one vaccine and then get a different kind. And the reason why is we haven't studied that. We don't know the safety around doing something like that. So in fact, most of these vaccines are about 70% effective after even just one dose. And so a better strategy would be to get your one dose and to wait until the second dose of the vaccine you got is available. Because in fact, waiting an extra week or two makes the vaccine work, that second dose work even better, because the second dose is meant to boost what occurs with the first dose. And the longer the interval between the first and second dose, the better the boost. And so don't get two different kinds of vaccines. Just wait until the second dose of the kind you got the first time is available.
And also, once you get the first vaccine, you'll receive a card that will have your second dose date on there. So when you get when you get your first vaccine, they will give you the date of your next appointment, your next 2-week appointment for your second vaccine. So you don't need to go anywhere else. And typically you'll be going back to the same spot that you got the first vaccine from.
Thank you, Jackie and Andrew. Doctor. So continue to use the chat, folks. That seems to be working well, unless you raise your hand. Okay, Clintona, how do they know which vaccine to give people? How long does the vaccine last? Well, she has like 3 questions. Will people have to take it yearly? So how do they know which vaccine to give? How long does the vaccine last? And will you have to take it yearly?
So you will get whatever vaccine is currently available in our community. One of the biggest problems we're dealing with nationally is that we can't keep up with the manufacturing of these vaccines. Hopefully, as more different kinds of vaccines are available, then we will actually have enough doses to really make an impact. And so, unfortunately, at this time, there's no choosing. You just kind of have to get whatever's locally available, whatever's being offered by the clinic that is giving you a call. And then they'll expect you to get the second dose of that same vaccine. How long does it last? And I think Shani can speak to that a little bit too, if you like, as someone who's working in a local clinic. How long does this vaccine last? You know, I'm going to be honest and say that that is one of the great unknown questions. So you can imagine that with the Pfizer and the Moderna trials, we just finished those trials in December, and we only have about 2 or 3 months of data looking at the efficacy. So we don't have enough data to say, is it going to last 3 months? Is it going to last 6 months? Is it a year? Is it forever? What our best guess is that we probably will have enough protection for about 6 to 12 months. I don't know that I think it'll be a yearly vaccine, but I think we will probably all need at least one more boost in about a year's time.
All right, so this question is, Lady V, have any of you, and she's speaking specifically to the doctor, Shani, we know Jackie has taken it. Have you guys taken the vaccination?
Yes, so I have. I received my vaccination. So to kind of piggyback off what Dr. Branch was saying, we are currently using the Moderna vaccine. And
hold on, Shani, before you go into it, just doctor, have you taken the vaccine?
Yeah, I got 2 doses of Pfizer.
Yes.
It was painful.
Okay.
And
All right.
I had some chills, but I recovered very quickly.
All right, go ahead, Shani. I'm sorry.
So we're using Moderna, and I got mine New Year's Eve. And funny story. So I went to my mom's house to make cookies with her for New Year's Eve, and we like had our dinner. And then I was pretty tired. So that was my symptom, was just fatigue. So my mom was making cookies, and I took a cookie, and she's like, "Give me back that cookie." And I was like, "Give it to me." And I just kind of like snapped at her. She's like, "Okay, you need to go home and go to bed." So I was like, "Okay." So it just really made me tired. But the next morning, I just, it was a Saturday, so I laid around. But then by noon, I was fine, and I just ran my errands. So I stayed close to home for the weekend. But that was the only thing I really had to report. That and some arm pain at the injection site.
Okay, Aretha wants to know, and then we're going to go to Bernita. She has her hand up. Aretha wants to know, why is there 2 different kinds of vaccinations, doctor?
So you always try, because when we started this whole thing, we didn't know which vaccine would work. You always try multiple different methods because you want to end up with at least one type of vaccine that works. And so I think it was strategic to try multiple different ways of making these vaccines. But remember, they're all targeting the same thing. And so the scientific approach is the same. They're just being made in slightly different ways. And it's also strategic because some ways of making vaccines actually works better in older people. Some work better in kids. And so you always want to have multiple different ways of making a vaccine so that you have the chance of protecting the largest group of people.
Okay, Bernita, I see your hand.
Hello. I just
Hi.
want to know if you have a lot of allergies, is it good to get this vaccine?
So Bernita, that's a really great question. I'm sure everybody's aware that both the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines have been causing severe allergic responses in a small group of people. So it's something like 11.1 persons per 1 million people who get the vaccine. So it is still extremely rare. And so what we're recommending to people is that we know that this vaccine, like every single vaccine, can cause a severe allergic response. We think it's rare. But if you are a person that has a history of a lot of allergies, particularly if you've had what we call anaphylaxis, and that's when your throat closes up and your tongue swells and you have trouble breathing, that you get that first dose of vaccine in a supervised setting like a clinic or a doctor's office. And that way, if something were to happen, that they could treat you and rapidly respond to it. Don't go to your clinic, don't go to your pharmacy, or don't go to, to a pop-up clinic or something like that. Go to some place where they have medical facilities.
Right. And so to add on that, folks, like your doctor, if you have a history of, anaphylaxis or throat closing up to vaccines, or if you have a long history of allergies, your doctor should already be discussing this with you and coming up with a plan to make sure that when I receive my vaccine, I'm going to sit in the office for, 15 to 30 minutes to make sure that I'm okay, and that there should be a nurse standing by. So that's like in every vaccine clinic that I've involved in, and at Jordan's, that's what the common practice is. So.
All right, thank you. Whitmore says, if you could choose which vaccine, which one would you choose for you and your families?
I hate this question. No, it's a good question. So I'll be honest, and I'll say that I hope my parents get the Johnson & Johnson or the AstraZeneca vaccine. Not because I don't think they all work, but just because they're older. And I know that the way the Johnson & Johnson and the AstraZeneca vaccines are made, that historically they work well in older adults. And so that's the only bias I have about that. But I think they're all good vaccines.
Mon said, what type of impact will the new variant have on the population if we reach herd immunity?
So that's still something we're learning a lot about. There's two new variants that are of concern to us right now. There's one that was first detected in the UK. That doesn't mean that that's where it started. That's just where it was first detected. And there's another one that was first detected in South Africa. Now the UK one is a virus that transmits better from person to person. And it may also actually cause severe illnesses in as many as a third more people. So that one worries us because of the potential impact in terms of disease. But the vaccine still seems to work really well against it. Now, the South Africa one does not cause more severe disease, but that one may have mutated in a way that you could become reinfected easier. And so that one may affect the vaccine to some extent. And so they're both challenging. And, I kind of feel like we're in a race against time, which is why I really think if we can get everybody vaccinated this summer, then we eliminate the possibility of these new strains emerging because there's no virus to transmit. And so there's no way new viruses can mutate. And so we're in a race against time. If we can do this year, then we stand a much better chance of not ending up in the same situation next year with new strains that are evading vaccines.
And Dr. Branch, there's really quick, Willie. Dr. Branch, there's a percentage of the population that we want to have vaccinated so that we don't have to have this new strain. What percentage is that?
Yeah, I really think 80% or better is sort of what's in my mind right now. I mean, we as scientists and doctors, we've sort of gone back and forth about this. We thought 60, maybe 70% might be okay, but this virus is so efficient, it's so smart that I think we really need to be as effective as possible. So I'm going to say north of 80%.
All right, what is the plan to promote continuous vaccination coverage for the people that do get the vaccination shots? So, is there an overall arching doctor plan for the vaccinations for, let's say, Monroe County?
Jackie, do you want to weigh in on that?
So,
from a health perspective?
So, Conversations are still happening. So as we all know, a few weeks ago, the governor appointed Common Ground Health and URMC, two of our leading agencies. URMC is actually the hub for our 9-county Finger Lakes region. And so they're responsible for the distribution of the vaccines. And then Common Ground Health is doing the community engagement piece. So conversations are still happening. We have actually, one of the things that we're doing, just as we're doing right now in real time, is beginning to have tabletop conversations throughout the community so that people can get a better understanding of the vaccine and the process of the vaccine. And so with all of you on this call, what we're hoping is that you will now take this information that you have, and if you need some information or resources, materials to do this, you can reach out to me, and we at Common Ground can give you those resources. But what our hopes is that some of you will take this information and begin to have your own tabletop discussions within your networks, with your family and friends, about the vaccine, so that it becomes sort of a ripple effect within the community, so that people are getting the education that they need in order to make decisions on whether or not to take the vaccine. So, if you all are looking for resources to do this, you can start your own Zoom meetings, even with your own families, right? Like start a Zoom, have a Zoom meeting, invite your family to join you and have discussion about the vaccine. And really it's just 2 questions. Are you going to take the vaccine? Why or why not? And that sparks conversation. And so most of you who are on this call have been educated, quote unquote. And so we're hoping that you'll take this information and share it within your circles.
Absolutely. And I would ask that Shani and Dr. Branch and Jackie put your information in the chat if you don't mind, if you can reach out to them to get further information. Of course, this is being shared on our UPBCA associate YouTube page. We're going to put it on our Facebook page. We're going to share it, and we'll get it to WDKX. We'll get it to all of the people. But we do have some more questions. We're going to continue on for about another 15, 20 minutes to get these questions. We really want to spend time answering folks' questions. So the next one I go is, why are healthcare providers, and I think you guys answered this, why are healthcare providers given an approved vaccine and non-providers given a trial? I believe your situation, Jackie, you volunteered for the trial, correct?
So yes, and I just want to put a disclaimer out there. So my volunteering as a participant is not on behalf of Common Ground Health. So I'm playing 2 dual roles here. I'm here as on behalf of Common Ground Health as program manager, and again, as myself as an individual who has participated in the vaccine trials. So yes, I have participated in the vaccine trials. And I think I said earlier, I've had both of my injections already, and things are going well. Like Shawnee, my first injection, I think I had a runny nose, some mild cold-like symptoms, but after that, everything has been fine. I'm still in the trials. I don't know if I got the placebo or if I got the vaccine. I don't know that yet, so I'm hoping to find that out soon. Again, for me, it was something that was dumped in my spirit to do. I'm going through the process.
Thank you, Jackie, for answering that. I want to get my question in real quick. Okay, so I get the vaccine, regardless of which one I get. I get it. Now, am I Superman? Like, do I still got to wear my mask and my gloves, or do I walk around? I'm immune from COVID-19. No, I'm good. Everybody else is in trouble. I'm straight. I mean, what do you still have to take PPE precautions, doctor?
Yes, you do. So remember when we were going through how these vaccines work, and I mentioned that they're at best 95% effective at preventing infection, but that means there's still a small risk that you could become infected. We think that even if you become infected, you won't get a severe illness, but you might have a mild cold, and you could be completely asymptomatic because the vaccine prevents you from getting sick, but you still can transmit the virus to other people. So until we get the pandemic under control, even though you're now protected from getting sick and ending up in the hospital, as a sort of a service to the rest of the community, you're going to keep wearing your mask until we end the pandemic.
Thank you. So more questions in the chat. What is the difference between the vaccine that they're developing for kids and the vaccine for adults?
So the ones they're developing for kids are going to be the same vaccines, but children are not little adults. They're children, and they have an entirely different immune system and sort of response to vaccines. So there's things that we have to figure out. We have to figure out the right doses in children, because the doses we give to adults can be toxic in children, and we have to make sure that it actually produces the same protective response that we see in adults. So it'll be the same vaccines. We just have to sort out the right dose and prove efficacy.
Can someone talk about the new one-shot vaccination?
So I think you're talking about the Janssen or Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So that's the only vaccine currently being trialed as a single dose. I don't know if that's how it's going to end up to be, because I think many of us think that even with that vaccine, even though the one dose is good, people will need a boost. And so the data is not available yet. It'll probably be available at the end of the month, and then we'll see. But, you know, we're hopeful. We're just not expecting that that'll actually work out.
Mons brought into the space that we all should continue to get tested for the virus as well, even though we've received both of our vaccinations. Doc, would you amen that?
Yeah, and I can also have Shawnee answer that question. Yeah.
So I would say no, because by this time you've already been, your immunity already recognizes the virus, and so I have people that are in the middle of getting their vaccines, so I don't necessarily think that they're going to to say that you have a new infection isn't going to necessarily show up unless we have some serious concerns about how you're feeling today. But even then, if you've had both of your vaccines, you getting a test won't necessarily show us anything different, right? We already know that you've been exposed to a very small amount of virus, right? So I would say no, unless, and Dr. Branch, if there's
Yeah,
any.
I think Shawnee makes a good point. So if you're talking about the antibody tests, you'll have antibodies once you're vaccinated.
Yeah.
So don't get any antibody tests. However, if you develop symptoms, fevers, chills, and you're like a month after your second dose of vaccine, and you're coughing and you're short of breath, then in that situation, I would still go ahead and get tested, because it is still possible to get infected even though you've been vaccinated. And even though we hope the vaccine will prevent you from getting sick enough to need to see your doctor or to your hospital, the risk of transmitting to other people still exists. And so if you have symptoms, regardless of whether or not you've been vaccinated or not, you should still seek medical care. You should still get tested, because the last thing you want to do is take the virus home to your family who may not have gotten vaccinated because they're not essential workers or something like that.
Speaking of essential workers, Amans, did you want to follow up with that particular point?
Yeah, in reference to the governor's current executive order, as it relates to the appearance enhancement industry, we now have to get tested every week. Is that correct, Willie?
That is correct.
So I get my second shot February 15th.
Okay.
I'm still going to continue to wear my mask. Is there a need to still continue to get tested, even though there's a slight chance that?
Yeah. No, now I understand. You're talking about routine testing, even when you don't have.
That's what I also thought he meant as well, which is what we're seeing a lot of in the clinic. So we're seeing a lot of people coming in for routine.
Yeah, in that case, I would agree with Shawnee. I don't think there's a role for routine testing once you've been vaccinated.
Yeah,
And folks, just so you're aware, a lot of workplaces are sending people to us just for routine tests. And while if you have like a job where you're exposed to the public and you're not vaccinated yet, you should be, come in and do your routine testing, especially to keep you safe. But that's the only way I would ask you to come in for routine tests.
I'm going to ask you at the end, Shawnee, to tell people about how they get tested with your particular organization. And then if anyone else has any other spaces of being tested. We do have some more questions, though. I'm going to try to exhaust these questions for about another 10 minutes, and then we'll wrap up. This is from Whitmore. Biochemically, we uh, we may not be exactly the same based on ancestry. So if Black people specifically may not have well represented in the trial studies, does that make our efficacy decline?
I can answer this question. Jackie, did you want to speak to this at all or no?
I think we all have something to say about this one.
Okay.
Okay, let's go.
So I would challenge the belief that biochemically or from a biological standpoint that we would respond to vaccine differently based on purely on race and ethnicity. I guess I would wonder, biologically speaking, if race is really a biological construct or if it's more of a social one. So that would be my first thought surrounding that. In 100 years of doing vaccine studies and developing treatments for all sorts of things, we have never proven that Black people respond differently to vaccines than white people do, or that they have different side effects than white people do. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I would say we haven't looked very often. It's really kind of a new thing to even think about this. But there's no evidence that that happens. And we've worked really hard to try to make sure that the trial participants were diverse and did represent the full spectrum of America. And that's why, having Jackie participate and then Jackie going out and talking to other people and bringing other people along in the trial was really important. I will say with the Moderna trial, I think it was about 18% African American and 20% Hispanic. That's like amazing. We never do that well. And it really was because we worked really, really hard at it. Because we knew that going out and convincing Black and Hispanic people to take this vaccine, we would need to be able to say, well, we tried it in people who look like you and speak your language and have the same cultural and ethnic background as you. Because as you guys all know, people tend to trust people that look like them. And that's just the reality of the world we live in. So I would say that I again challenge the idea that we'll respond differently to vaccines than white people will. And I will also say that, and that for the most part, the vaccines were reasonably successful in having fairly diverse representation.
Thank you, Doc. Shawnee, come on. I saw you getting excited about that question.
Listen, so I think to the point of the person that asked the question, I think that that's a really valid question because there are points in medicine when Black people and white people were measured differently, right? When you think of like creatinine and you think of like renal function and how we measure kidney function, right? That we have different function for Black people and white people. So, and that we are definitely historically put in different categories when it comes to how we respond to different illnesses. But I'm not going to add on to anything that Dr. Branch said. I thought it was really a perfectly spot on. I just would say, for the segue of being like, there are different medicines that we respond to. I just was thinking of breast cancer research and how medicines and on how we treat breast cancer. Those are things that we are, really not doing very well in because we just don't have enough participants that are women or people of color that should be participating in these trials. So not in every way. I think the vaccine is perfectly, fine, but just in the other ways I was thinking of. So
All right, we're going to wrap up right now, ladies and gentlemen. We had got a lot of questions in today. I'm sorry for being such a stickler with time and cutting folks off. Please forgive me. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. I just really wanted to leave enough time to get as many questions as possible. And oftentimes when we get to going, we tend to, we just kind of keep going. So I want to make sure that we were just keeping track of that. And then everyone did a wonderful job. I just want to say, Doctor, I'm going to give you guys about a minute of closing statements here. I'll start with Dr. Branch, and then we'll go on to Jackie and Shani. You can also, in your closing statement, tell about how to receive your services, how to be tested, etc. And you can take 2 minutes. How about that? All right, go ahead, Dr. Branch. Your
Oh,
closing
I don't
statement.
have much to say. Thank you for
Okay.
inviting me. I really appreciate these kinds of conversations. I really do. I think you guys are amazing messengers for our community, and I hope that we answered your questions. If we didn't, yeah, feel free to reach out anytime. Like email me anytime. I'll even give you my cell if you want to, because I think having you guys convinced, or at least being willing to consider the possibility of being vaccinated is going to be really important to the rest of our community.
All
Thank you.
right, thank you. Jackie?
Educate. Let's get educated on the vaccine. Let's spread the word. Let's continue to have these tabletop discussions within your own individual circles. Again, we at Common Ground Health are more than willing to be resources for you all. Start a Zoom with your family and friends. Have some conversation around the vaccine. We have a speakers bureau that we can actually bring some of our folks in to sit in on your Zooms to answer any questions that folks may have. Again, we want to continue to have this conversation in our communities because our community needs to be educated, right? And so that they can articulate and be able to make the right decision when it comes to the vaccine. So I put my information in the chat. Please reach out to me. Again, stay masked up, social distancing, and be safe. Thank you for
Jackie.
having me.
Thank you.
Yes.
Shani?
So I think the takeaway as a primary care person, medical person, that I would like everyone to hear is that, the virus is, it's dangerous enough on its own, but when you have chronic illnesses like the ones that our mothers, fathers, grandmothers, and significant others have, it makes it much more dangerous. And I would like to. That's the thing I would like to have be the takeaway here. I it's really sad. It's really scary to see that, and I want to make sure that people understand that Jordan also has their respiratory clinic open from 1 until 8 p.m. every day, not weekends, but 1 until 8 p.m. I'm there, and there are medical professionals that are there to evaluate you and then test you. And so, but I've had to send 23-year-olds to the hospital with an oxygen saturation that normally should be 100 at about 70%, with a kid crying next to her. These are young people. These are families. People are not seeing one person a week later, and then a week later they passed away. So it's really, and I don't want to get into the cliche of it's not a joke, but I was surprised. I really was, and so I really would strongly encourage everyone here to consider getting the vaccine.
Thank you. I want to say, just on behalf of UPBCA, my board, we're so elated and excited to have Jackie and Shani approach me with this particular idea to do this. I was already talking with my church and my folks about doing something, and we're getting ready to do something in our church as well, putting a panel together and having this conversation. I agree. We need to have this, and as barbers, beauticians, and appearance enhancement professionals, we are open, thank God. Our businesses are open, where we have people coming in. We should be having these conversations behind the chair. This is an opportunity to be able to inform the community so that they can make an informed decision around this vaccination. We've heard the facts here. We've heard the data. Do some more research. This video will be shared on our YouTube page at UPBCA Associates. It'll be on our Facebook page. It's going to be on our Instagram page. We're going to share it with all of the individuals who are here so they can share with their networks. Go to our website, www.upbca.org, to find out this information. But we're so excited that we're having the conversation because it's important. They say the people perish for the lack of knowledge. So we want to make sure that we're not perishing because of what we don't know. And when we know better, we do better, right? So let's do better with the information that we receive today. And let's go out and spread that information to others so that they can be informed, because we don't want anyone to perish. We want to take time now to remember and respect all of the over 400,000 people who have lost their lives to COVID-19. We want to bring that into the space and to honor them and their families and pray. We pray that their families be strengthened and that we work towards having a more healthy world, because this is a worldwide international epidemic and pandemic. And so we're praying for everyone. All right. So we're not going to keep you any longer. We're thankful for you being here. Our Shop Talk, UPBCA Shop Talk, is the first one of our year. Happy New Year, everyone. We bid you health and wellness. Wear your mask, protect your circle, 6 feet, do everything, PPE, everything you're supposed to do. You're not Superman. I found out once you get the shot, you still got to wear your mask because you can give it to somebody else. Okay. All right. So, but let's be mindful of the information we have. Reach out to Shawnee, reach out to Jackie, reach out to Dr. Branch. Thank you guys so much for your time, for your information, for your concern about this community. And thank all of you for joining us this evening. May God be with you. May God bless you is always our prayer. Good night.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Appreciate it so much.
Good night.